Okay, this is Alejandro with Boxing and Basketball, and we have a special guest today, Mike Rodriguez. Thank you, brother, for joining us today. It's been a minute since we talked, but I'm glad you're here. How you been, man?
Doing good, doing good. Just enjoying the weekend. I didn't work any fights this weekend. Watched a lot of NBA All Star Weekend stuff. A little bit of
Mm.
XFL. I'm a huge sports fan. Followed the fights a little bit. Ready to start a new week. I leave for Minneapolis on Thursday with Elvis Rodriguez, who's going to fight on Showtime next week with Team Wild Card with Freddie Roach. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, and you talking about the All Star game? It seems like someone couldn't make it today.
Yeah, when you told me off air that Sean couldn't make it due to a family obligation, I said, "No, man, I just walked from my living room and and got away from the NBA All Star game, and I was thought it was kind of weird that I was going to be on here, and I'm like, wait a minute, the NBA All Star game's on, so yeah, his family commitment, that's where he wants to watch the All Star game.
Tell the fans a little bit about your history in boxing and your homicide history. If you want to
Yeah,
give us a little background, so people that don't know about you, they could get
yeah,
a
and I
little bit
talked
input.
about things last time, but I've been on the sheriff's department now 35 years. I've been in homicide for 19. I've been back in boxing for about 15, 16 years. I'm fortunate to work with a lot of great trainers, a lot of great fighters. I work mainly as a cutman. It allows me the freedom to kind of not have to be in the gym, which because of my regular job, even though my job now is a little bit more user friendly because I supervise the missing persons unit, so I'm pretty much just consulting and overseeing and directing what detectives do with missing people. Um, it allows me the freedom to travel. If I was training a guy, I couldn't say, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for 4 or 5 days because I'm going to go with this other fighter." And it allows me to work with some of the top trainers in the world. I get to work with the Freddie Roaches and the Buddy McGirts and the Stephen Edwards and the Ronnie Shields and I'm shortchanging some people, but I mean I just get to work with a lot of the top trainers, Manny Robles and Marvin Zamodio and Ariano Sosa, and you name it, man. I get to work with a whole host of great trainers, work with great fighters and great managers, and it works out for me.
And I also been seeing that you've been a little busy, like doing some work. I believe like last week or 2 weeks you were doing some OC fights and
I
OC
did.
stuff.
I actually helped out. It was actually an MMA fight. They put one or two MMA fights on the card, and the fighter that I worked with making his pro debut happened to be the son of a retired homicide detective
Oh,
that I worked with for many years. So it was kind of more doing them a favor. I don't train him. I just went in, wrapped his hands. It was just there for support. I got to see a lot of the retired guys that I hadn't seen in a while because some of them live out of the area and out of state. It was just mainly just for us to come together and mainly to show support. And then while I was there, I ended up working the main event. They asked me, a young local kid, um, last name is Casales. I ended up working his fight. He got a first round knockout. It was a good night. I hadn't worked fights in a couple of weeks, so sometimes it's nice just to go out there and throw a few batting practice pitches or get a few shots up before the game because I'm about to start getting really busy with some good fights late February, definitely March and April, and hopefully come May and June get it into full swing for the summer.
so I know you got a fight coming up with Freddie Roach. How did you and Freddie Roach link up?
It's been a long journey. I used to train at Freddie's original gym before he ever had Wild Card. It was the Outlaw Gym owned by the actor Mickey Rourke, and Freddie kind of ran that gym. You had fighters like James Toney, Oscar De La Hoya used to come through, the late Rudy Zavala, Alex
Mm.
Ramos, John David Jackson. You had a whole host of fighters that used to train there, and I was training there, and I had met Freddie way back when. But it was kind of one of those things that just kind of developed as far as me working with him. He he had other cutmen that were higher on his priority list. So I started getting called when the two top cutmen were away, in New York or Vegas, and I'd work with the local kid. And then it just kind of the kind of moved my way up the food chain there and developed the relationships, which has been going almost 30 years now. And
Nice.
I'm lucky that for the most part, now I knock on wood that I get the first call, to work with all the top fighters, including like, Manny Pacquiao and Elvis Rodriguez, and Callum Walsh, and when he previously trained Mark Magsayo, Blair Cobb, and a whole host of other people. I mean, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And there's definitely a long list of fighters. And the good thing about that now is my son Andrew has been doing cuts for about 10, 12 years. He's starting to work with a lot of their guys also and develop with some of the young guys. So for me, it's like, hey man, what's better than doing what you love than with the ones you love most? And I think it's more of a family when you talk about Freddie and Marie and Marvin and Pepe Riley over there and the whole team over there at Wild Card, because the Wild Card is like a machine, and as long as
Yeah.
everybody their position, it really works.
And being a cut man, what's like the worst cut that you ever experienced in your career?
Well, the one that I got to work was definitely the three cuts that Francisco Vargas had when he fought Orlando Salido a few years back at StubHub, with StubHub then down in Carson. Marcus Brown got cut so bad in a fight with Jean Pascal that they didn't even let me work on it. It was literally in the middle of the round. He severed an artery above his eye, and I remember in the back that the plastic surgeons couldn't even stop the bleeding. So I'm
Wow.
glad they stopped that fight. There was a fight that I worked with Marcus in Vegas against Bordeaux Jack, and Bordeaux Jack was cut really, really bad. And I remember, if you still see on the internet, they always show referee Tony Weeks,
Mm.
covered in blood. Well, he actually fought Marcus during that fight, so I was a part of that. Sean Porter has been cut when I worked with him years ago. This is going back a few years, but his two fights with Julio Diaz, he was cut bad. When he won the title from Devin Alexander, he was cut bad. And when he lost the title to Cal Brook, he was cut really, really bad. And we were able to get him through that. So those are just ones that stand out. And then work with Russian Sergey Lipinets when he won the title, and a
Mm.
couple of fights before then, he had been cut really bad. So it's just those are the fights where you kind of you make your mark, and people you hope people notice. You don't ever want your fighter to get cut, but that's what you're paid to do, and you have to be at your best. When your best is needed.
And you as a cut man, when say you're watching the fight and you see the fighter get cut, how do you like, what kind of demeanor and what kind of communication do you want to show the fighter when you're working on his cut? Like making it seem like it's not a big deal, that he's fine, or
Yeah, I always tell my fighters before the fight, and I got to work with Virgil Ortiz on his last fight, and he got cut actually in the first round, and I believe he stopped his guy in the ninth. So I had to work that
Mhm.
cut for 8 rounds. And I always tell them, look, just because you see me working on you doesn't mean anything is wrong. And no matter what happens, I'm going to get you through that. And I think you being calm and them seeing you being calm, it kind of it kind of brings the emotions down a little bit so they can listen to their trainer, they can breathe, they can recover, and you get them ready for the next round. Now, there's no magic potion where you're going to stop your cut immediately. Any bad cut, it's going to take you 2 or 3 rounds of you working, drying out that wound, getting the medicine in there, using good direct pressure. And then you got to worry about swelling in other areas. You got to worry about
Right.
bloody noses, cut lips. Maybe they got to cut on the other side, and being able to multitask. And it's just being organized and having that plan where when it happens, you're hoping for the best, but you have to go in there expecting the worst. And I think because of my military background, my cop background, I was a former fighter, I was a former trainer, and being in that position many, many times, you have a game plan, and you try to just apply everything that you know in a positive way so that your fighter can go out for that next round. Now, you can't control what happens during that round because it's like Groundhog Day. You're going to come back and start all over in 3 minutes.
Okay. And has there ever been a time that you're working on a cut, but the trainers and corner are not letting you do your job?
Yeah, and that happens sometimes when you get inexperienced corners. I work with Luis Netti, not the fight last night but of his fight in Vegas a while back, and he decided to join us, huh?
Yeah,
Hey,
he
what's going on,
decided to
Mike?
take
It
a
must
break from the All Star game.
it must be
No,
commercial. Is it halftime at the All Star game? Because you were
oh,
fooling nobody with that. I got some family stuff to do. I was watching the All Star game too, man.
No, my daughter's on my computer,
Oh,
and I don't like doing it on the phone. I like the big screen, but I was like, she's still on it doing her stuff, so I said, well, I'm just gonna do it from the phone, then.
it's 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 fine. But getting back to your question, um, I was working a bunch of fights that night on Vegas. It was a big pay per view, and I had no prior relationship with Luis Netti's trainer. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, some of those guys are very, very stuck in their ways. They're not as open minded as a lot of the trainers are here in the United States. For some reason, I don't know if nobody told him that I was the cut man, but I think he thought he was the cut man, and we were um, literally arguing in the corner, and he was really impeding what I needed to do. Nettie had a small cut on his head, and I remember he's trying to break the little the little small vial to work the cut. And I'm like, I got the cut. His manager hired me to work the cut. It wasn't a good, very negative experience. I was this close to knocking his trainer out in the corner in between rounds. When I say I was that close, I was at the point where you already start seeing flashes and like tunnel lights around your eyes. He didn't know what he was doing. I don't even remember his name. We ended up shaking hands afterwards, but that would have been the first time that I ended up having to knock somebody out outside the ring. It was a bad situation, you know, but I honestly think nobody told him that I was actually there to work the cut. So it was kind of like maybe looking at me like, who the hell is this guy?
Gotcha. Like just miscommunication that night.
I'll chalk it up to miscommunication, but yeah.
And so you got this fight with Elvis. There's a lot of news coming out from the boxing world. They're saying that Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis is going to be announced either Monday or Tuesday. We got the Caleb Plant versus Benavides fight. So, what are your thoughts on those fights?
I mean, they're great fights. I mean, you got, I mean, you think about Caleb Plant and David Benavides, and the nice thing is, I don't work with Benavides. I worked a fight with Caleb Plant, but I'm not his cut man. But I have the three pay-per-view fights on there. I have Joey Spencer against Jesus Ramos, and I've worked with Ramos, but I'm Joey's primary cut man. Um, I got Chris Colbert, who's going to fight Rayo Valenzuela, and I got Cody Crowley, who's going to fight Jesus Ramos's uncle, Abel Ramos, and I've worked with Abel as well. So, and I've worked with Rayo. So when I look on the card, I've worked with the exception of David Benavides, I've worked with every fighter on that card. I'm really excited about it. I think Plant and Benavides are going to be a really, really good fight. You got two contrasting styles, two guys who really don't like each other, which I don't factor in too much because a lot of times you see these guys, they got all kind of energy, you know, at the weigh-ins, and then they don't come out fighting like that. But I think this fight is really going to come down to who can insert and perform their style to their benefit. Benavides is like a snow, and after a couple of rounds, it just seems like he keeps getting bigger and bigger, similar to the way Jared Hurd was before my guy J Rock ended up beating him. Jared Hurd was similar in that nature. They
Mm-hmm.
start pushing their will on you. They start making you get less gas mileage per round. You know,
Right.
rounds start stacking up, and when you can take a guy out to the ocean and drop him off a little farther, so he has to swim back every round. But Caleb Plant, man, I mean, he is a dynamite fighter. Stephen Breadman Edwards is training him now. You saw what happened in the Durrell fight. That's no fluke. And I think it's going to be a really good fight. And then you get back to Tank and you get back to Ryan. You know, I always tell people it's not who hits harder, it's who can take each other's power the best. When you look in the old days like Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler and Tommy Hearns and just a whole host of fights like that, it always comes down to like who can take each other's best shot. That's what made Hagler so great when he could beat guys like John the Beast Mugabe and and Tommy Hearns and guys like that is because those guys could really really punch, but Hagler could take a good shot. Excited about the fight. It's one of those fights where I don't know who's going to win. I can see both guys winning. I just think it's really good for boxing. We need it. Um, I hate to say it, a lot of these fighters, and I get it, they have to maximize and make the most money. But a lot of these guys, they'd rather just be famous than be considered great fighters. It's just a different era. I don't like to compare like well, who's better here or who's better there. It's like comparing, great basketball players, comparing Wilt and Kareem and, Michael Jordan and LeBron. I mean, you're always going to be partial to the era where maybe you associate with the most, and that's the way
Hmm.
I.
Mike,
And then
what
also,
Mike?
oh, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, I just want to piggyback off what you said about the Chris Colbert that you got something coming out of him on pay per view. What do you think went wrong with Chris in the Hector Garcia fight?
Hats off to Hector Garcia because Hector Garcia came to fight. He's a 30 guy. Um, you could see that, he didn't embarrass himself against Tank. It was his night. Hopefully, Chris learned some things that night that that some nights you're going to have to use all the tools in your toolbox. Chris has a ton of tools in his toolbox. I don't think he took the guy lightly. Sometimes you just have to tip your cap to the other guy, and you learn from him. But skill wise, Chris Colbert's as talented as anybody, and sometimes you have to look at a negative and turn it into a positive. And hopefully that happens with the Ryo fight because it's both guys kind of. I'm not going to say at a crossroads because they've only each of them got one loss, and I hats off to both guys for taking that fight because it's really a contrast of styles. But Chris Colbert is actually pretty nasty and mean when he wants to be on the inside. I've seen him in the gym a lot when he came out here to California and was out here for a couple of months. Plus, I've worked a ton of his fights. And then you got Ryo, who's very explosive. But something happens to a guy maybe once you get knocked out with that mystique. There's not that mystique anymore. Now guys are looking to come at you. And I think that's what makes it such a good fight because both of them are such tremendous fighters. And too many people now, when a guy gets a loss, they kind of discard him. And man, I mean, that's just not the way it should be. You're fighting good fighters. Sometimes you're going to lose. Take Oscar De La Hoya. Didn't diminish him as a great fighter. He didn't miss anybody. He didn't duck anybody. Roberto Duran was the same way. Sugar Ray Leonard was the same way. Tommy Hearns was the same way. And that's why I respect guys like that.
Mike, because when I watched that fight, I'll be honest, I had in my mind going to that fight. I just had Chris as the favorite, and when I was about 2 or 3 rounds into that fight, because Chris is quick, he's fast, and he's strong, right? But I think now this is just my personal opinion. I think what shocked him and shocked me and a lot of other people was Hector Garcia's ability to counter so fast. Because usually Chris can hit you and get out and turn and hit you at angles. But I was shocked that Hector could counter so quick and so fast before you can get out of there. And when I saw that, I was like, uh oh, this is going to be a long night.
And a lot of people really hadn't seen Hector very much. I know his trainer Bob Santos really well. Bob's a really good friend of mine.
Hmm.
They believed in what he could do, and sometimes, man, you just have to tip your cap at somebody because what you're doing, and that's why styles make fights. What you're doing
Right,
isn't working against certain guys.
right.
I'd like to see them. Fight again. I think that's a fight. Chris definitely isn't gonna run away from. Chris Colbert is a very very talented fighter,
He is.
and hopefully the best is still to come.
Right.
And that's what I was gonna tell you. That a lot of people are overlooking this fight because Rayo he got stopped this last fight, and then Chris in that fight, these guys didn't need to fight each other, but they're just trying to challenge each other and see what they still have. Like I
Well,
think they're like testing themselves.
they'll have. They're young guys. They're not guys that are 30 years old. They both know that a win over each other is going to put them back in the mix. And when you're back in the mix, you make more money. This is a business, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They could both take other fights where they're fighting lesser guys, 2 or 3 fights as kind of quote unquote comeback fights. But they're both competitive guys. They're both talented fighters. I've worked with both of them. I know firsthand. I've seen them both in the gym. I applaud guys that are moving toward each other on a collision course rather than talking about it and then moving away from each other.
Yeah, because it's rare now to see like fighters try to get the best fight. So I applaud them too that they're taking this fight and they will whoever wins is gonna make a big
Well,
statement.
same situation with Joey Spencer against Jesus Ramos. I mean, you got two of the young guns in the junior middleweight division. Them and Sebastian Fundora, who's probably at this particular point is a rung ahead of them, just an advancement, just based on the fights that he's already had. And Fundora's going to fight, Brian Mendoza, one of my fighters. I just found out 2 days ago. Brian got a hold of me. I worked his last fight with Jason Rosario in Minneapolis when he stopped him, and I work with him against Fundora, who's just a tremendous fighter because of his physical presence. He's really, really a tough out.
And you know what, Mike? To me, man, now you got a lot of good fighters you work corners for. But man, I'm gonna tell you, Mike, y'all really have something on your hands, man, with this Bivol, Dimitri Bivol. Man, when y'all beat Canelo, when I saw that, I was like, wow. I said, man, he really put it to you, Canelo. But then when he had to fight Zerto Ramirez, I said, oh, now this gonna show us where Bivol was at. And he made it seem like it was child's play. And I
Yeah.
was like, Bivol's really good. Now, if he fights Arthur Beterbiev and beats him, hands down, Bivol is the top five light heavyweights of all time.
Wow, that's saying a lot. And Arthur Beterbiev is a tremendous fighter. I worked against him with Marcus Brown about 15 months ago. I got to see him up close, and Marcus gave it everything that he had. And Beterbiev
Right,
is just one fantastic fighter. It was no surprise. I swear to you, when Bivol beat Canelo, it was no surprise. Everything.
right,
I was not surprised in the least, because people get caught up, and Canelo's a great fighter, but people get caught up in the fandom of a certain athlete or a certain fighter, and they forget about the other guy, that the other guy has to say so in what happens, and that's exactly what Dimitri did. I had a chance to work with Dimitri before, also, in Russia. I've been around him a little bit over the years because he trains here in LA. That was no surprise to me, and I'd love to see Bivol and Arthur Beterbiev. Those are the fights, that people want to see. That's what makes boxing so interesting. But when it's going right and all four wheels are on the ground, engine spinning, that's why people gravitate towards boxing. Yeah,
well,
the business end gets in the way sometimes, but sometimes, man,
right.
magically beautiful.
Because what I thought was going to happen, Mike, was with that Bivol fight. This what was going through my mind was because I already knew that Bivol could fight. That was just there was no shock there, right? But in my mind, I said, what Canelo's going to do, he's going to attack the body for like the first 8 rounds to slow him down and take him out championship rounds. Man, Bivol was so elusive the whole night. The way he hit and got out of the way, hit and got out of the way, I was like, this is what you call boxing one on one. Like, it was the most perfect 12 rounds I've ever seen in my life.
Well, yeah, I mean, controlled range, and when you can control range and fight in the locations and the spots where you're comfortable, where you have the advantage, and that's exactly what he did. People didn't realize that, he's not a small guy, and like I said, all respect to Canelo, but people get caught up in the fandom of it all.
Right.
Oh, he knocked Amir Khan out, or he knocked this guy out, and okay, great, that's great, and he had a lot of advantages in those fights. I'm not taking anything away against Canelo, but Dimitri beat his ass.
Right. He did.
So you guys think that Canelo don't have no chance
No,
in
that's
hell
not.
in a rematch?
No, Canelo's a great fighter, and great fighters have pride. I didn't say that. Canelo has pride, and there's not, when Canelo steps through the ropes as an athlete and as a fighter, he believes he's going to win the fight, and I believe he probably wants that fight again. Do I think he wins? He probably thinks he does. I don't think he does, but maybe he does. I'll never say he doesn't have a chance, because great fighters always have a chance. And there's been plenty of guys that have come back from losses against people and won the second fight. You look at Marco Antonio Barrero and Eric Morales. You look at Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. You look at just a whole host of other fighters. There's something that burns inside a fighter that loses to a guy, and now he's going to fight him again. It can go two ways. Either you have doubt because you lost, or you're going to use that. You're going to use what the loss as a fire to maybe go the extra mile, the extra distance to beat them the next time.
I'll tell you what, Alejandro, I'll give you my take on it. Uh, I think Bivol is going to beat him again. I just think there's certain guys that just has your number, right? It's just like with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. out of 10 fights, I really think Tyson's going to win 9 of it. He just has Wilder's number. And I just feel that Bivol just has Canelo's number. And
Well,
it's not to take away from Canelo that Canelo's not great. I just think Bivol just has his number.
go back a few years. Go back about 20 years. Shane Mosley's a great fighter, but he couldn't beat Vernon Forrest in the Olympic trial.
That's
He
right.
froze, okay? But
That's
Vernon
right.
couldn't beat Ricardo Mayorga,
Right. That's
who,
right.
who Mosley and De La Hoya and Vargas all knocked out.
Right.
So, you're right. When certain guys are just wrong for,
Right.
and all the things that Canelo does well, they don't work as well on a guy like Dimitri Bivol. He's a guy that knows how to keep range. He knows how to neutralize the space and the geography where he fights, and he uses it to his best advantages. Where Canelo, I think, in my opinion, kind of fell in love with his power, and then he's fighting a real light heavyweight champion, and that power didn't translate maybe as good as he thought it would. But Canelo,
Right.
fighter, I mean, it was still I thought Dimitri won convincingly, but it's not like Canelo got knocked out or he was embarrassed in that fight. That's what happens when you have two world-class, legitimate,
Right.
and that's what you want to see. And too many people are critical of those things. It doesn't mean Canelo's any less of a great fighter. No, he's a 4 or 5 division champion, and he'll pretty much fight anybody, and he's good for the sport. So I want to shit on him for that. It's just that some guys have your number and they may have it again. Or imagine if Canelo wins and then they got to do it again for the 3rd fight. I don't think that's the case, but you never know in boxing.
Mike, I wanted to share this with you, man. Since December, I already gave my whole background. I used to be an amateur boxer,
Right.
and I coached a little bit back in the day before my daughter started playing AAU basketball. But my daughters are playing they're done playing basketball now, so now I got plenty of time to the rest of my life really to donate, get back into boxing. So back around Christmas time, I went and got registered with USA Boxing. Well, this is what I did. I called the number here in Texas, up in Austin, and I talked to the commissioner. I said, "Hey, man, I really want to get into being a professional boxing judge and sit ringside." First thing the guy asked me was, well, do you have any experience judging? I said, well, no, just as a fighter and some coaching. I said, but not as a judge. He said, well, I want you to get with your local LBC there and get with them and get yourself about a good 2 years experience, being an amateur judge. Come back and apply, and we'll take care of it. And I said, cool. So my very first day, there's 4 phases for those that know officiating. The glove table. Then at the glove table, you got timekeeper, ringside judge, and then refereeing. So they start off on the glove table, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
they gotta bring the fighters, and I gotta spec the outfit in their hand wraps. And man, Mike, let me tell you something. I was shocked at the amount of people that the older guys that came up there and had their guys wrapped in war brand tape.
Yep.
I was like, yeah. I said, this is my man Mike stuff, man. Now I
Yeah.
said, next time I talk to Mike, man, a lot of amateurs are using it, but especially the older generation coaches are using it. The
Yeah.
young generation, they're just putting plain old white tape. And I was like, man, and look, and what I see, that war brand for all y'all out there, I'm gonna tell you how good Mike's brand is. When I see that war brand, that stuff is taped down so good. That plain old white tape, it be sticking up, peeling, coming back. And I was like, man, I really need a sponsor and get some war brand tape and start selling it here on your behalf, Mike, to get the
Yeah.
word out there how good it is.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. We've put a lot of thought and a lot of effort, into that tape to make it a lot different. We're branching off now because of this athletic tape that we are starting to sell to athletic trainers. We actually currently sell to the Tennessee Titans and the Cincinnati Bengals,
Oh, wow.
and we actually had to get tape to remove the branding where it still says war on the inside spool. But we actually have a white label tape that's just like the branded tape. And the next phase of what we're doing is going to be, because I don't care what sport you play, or a club team, or high school, or junior college, or Division 1, 2, or 3, or pro, you name it, the XFL, the NFL, they all have athletic trainers and they all need athletic tape. And that's going to be the next wave of what we're going to attack here in the next few months. And we're off to a good start. by having two NFL teams already under our belt, and we're looking at an NBA team and another NFL team that I don't want to jinx at the moment.
Right. Man, Mike, you got to tell me, man, how I can become part of this, man. I love this movement, man. Whether I can put some money into the company, I don't have a lot of money, but I want to invest. I want to be part of this movement that's happening, War Brand, man.
Yeah,
Sponsorship, representative, something.
let's
Help me become something in the company.
do that in a couple of days, because there's always room for expansion, especially with the next thing that we're doing, getting out. Obviously, there's only a couple of us in the company, but it's people getting out and letting all the athletic trainers know. It's, say, all the high schools in Houston. Hey, who are the athletic trainers? Hey,
Right.
what brand are you using? Hey, check this sample of tape out. See how it wraps wrists. See how it wraps ankles. And
Okay.
kind of go from there. And then we've already set up wholesale pricing and stuff like that and distribution. So as far as that goes, the hopefully the sky's the limit, and it's brand new and it's wide open for us.
Right. Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alejandro. I just had to give that, man. I was just so happy to see all these amateur kids have their coaches putting in War Brand tape. So that was exciting.
Just
Oh,
real quick, we just started sponsoring a couple of months ago the Kronk in Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Their amateur program, and to me, I go back years and years and years. When the Kronk first started with their first world champions, Helmer Kenty and Tommy Hearns and Jimmy Paul and Milt McCrory, and those guys. That's an era that I followed boxing so much and had a chance to meet a couple of those guys over the years. So I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, look, man, because of the respect that I have for the Kronk, it's kind of like the wild card with Freddie Roach. What can we do to help those kids over in the Detroit metropolitan area, so that we can sponsor them?" And it's worked out so far, and they've been posting a bunch of pictures. If you go on Twitter and you look at the Kronk website, the Kronk Twitter page, that they got a bunch of their young fighters that are fighting the Golden Gloves this weekend, wrapped in war tape, and I'm real happy about that.
Mike, it wasn't until I got into officiating here in Houston, I didn't realize talking to our president, vice president, and our supervisor that Houston's like the second largest LBC in the United States, followed by San Antonio. San Antonio got us beat by about 30 or 40 gyms, but just in Houston alone, there's just over 80 boxing gyms here in Houston
Well,
alone, but San Antonio got us beat.
well, look how many world champions Houston has. They got Oshaki Foster, they got Regis Prograis, they got Jamal Charlo, they got
Yep,
El Charlo. I think they may have five. I might be missing one. I mean, so the proof's in the pudding. Those guys all came up through various amateur programs. I know
yep,
Prograis grew up in Louisiana, but he spent a lot of his formative years as a pro over there with Bobby Benton and Aaron
yep.
Clark. And the proof's in the pudding, and you see the end result. And how can you not you know give them props? And you can see the ground level that Houston and Texas, the Dallas, San Antonio area are just tremendous hotbeds. And we're fortunate at War Tape. I'm fortunate as a Cutman that I get to work with a lot of those guys, and be a part of their teams. And I have nothing but love for everybody in the Lone Star State, because it's just a huge hotbed, not just for athletics, but especially boxing.
Right. But I tell you what, the next time you're back here in this area, Mike, let me know, man, so we can link up.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, go ahead,
yeah,
Alejandro.
and what better not having a tape developed by a cutman and people that actually do the job, and
Hmm.
that's fantastic, and it has a great backstory, and it's good. I'm glad that you guys are growing, and that's fantastic news.
Yeah, we're on Amazon now, and it's actually easier for me to name the people that don't use it, the trainers and the cutmen, as opposed to the ones that do. And we got a majority of the major cutmen, and even guys working at the lower levels, because you got to have grassroots stuff, and that includes lower level boxing, MMA, kickboxing, like I said, wrestling, jujitsu, and then now we're starting to branch off because it is athletic tape. So I'm trying to look at the big picture, and and maybe go even more global than we have.
And you know what, Mike? I even had one guy, I was telling him about your tape. He said, "Oh, I love War Brand." And he said, I promised him that I asked you. And he said, "Can you ask them if they have any discounts? You know how you have military discount. Do you have anything for veterans, military veterans?" I
I'm
said,
a
"I don't know if they do." I said, "But I asked them."
I'm a veteran, but he's a friend of a friend. I will always make it very user friendly for them. So all you gotta do is hit me up. You know,
Okay,
I never tell a friend no.
right. Got you. Man, Mike, that is so huge, man. Being with getting in with the NFL and stuff like that, man. And man, I'm just so happy with y'all growth and what y'all doing so far, man. It's just, dude, I'm seeing it right in front of my eyes. It's not, hearsay. I'm hearing secondhand, but I just see the growth of Warbrand, man. I'm so happy for y'all, man.
Thank you, thank you. You know, we've been an overnight success. It just took us about 12 years. You know, it's a funny story when I talk about overnight success. Somebody told Aaron Navarro, there in Houston, my good buddy. They told Aaron, "Man, Aaron, you're like an overnight success." He said, "Yeah, man, it just took me 20 years." You So some people only see the result, but then you have to look at the groundwork and the tentacles and the roots of where it comes from. And for me, man, the destination sometimes is not always the best place. I'm a journey person. It's the journey that makes everything worthwhile. Because sometimes when you look forward to something and you get there, it's a little bit anticlimactical because looking forward to it and the grind and the pursuit of it sometimes is even a greater feeling.
Right, man. Alejandro, let me tell you something about Mike and Aaron, man, Navarro, man. Listen, when Mike and Aaron say like they're friends, like they're really friends. When I talked to Aaron, he was like, "Man, Sean, our relationship goes beyond boxing."
And
He said beyond boxing. He said Mike is really, really my friend.
100%, man. A lot of family moments and good times and sometimes unfortunately hard and bad times. I love that guy. I whenever we talk, it was just the other day. Whenever I end a conversation with him, I always say I love you, brother, and he'll say I love you too, man. That's just how we roll.
Yep,
Nice.
yep. So,
So go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alejandro. Because once you
Oh,
finish, I got a couple basketball questions for Mike, man. Because me and him love the
oh,
NBA, but I want to ask him about. As soon as you finish, I want to ask him about some of these blockbuster trades we saw. But go ahead.
but for sure, Mike. For the Caleb Plan and Benavides, let's meet up and have a drink and talk boxing. So
Yeah,
I'll be there for that one.
good. I'll
But
down.
go ahead. And so besides all this, do you guys think this is the last boxing questions I'll ask? Do you guys think that Wilder and Ruiz is gonna happen in May?
Man, I stopped speculating if fights are going to get made. It's like when I scheduled to work a fight, they'll be like, "Hey, can you work this corner? Can you work my corner?" Absolutely. It becomes real to me when they send me my travel,
Mm.
okay, or when
Right,
you see an actual press conference. Because I mean, if you listen to 50 Twitter accounts or internet accounts, everybody's got their own spin on things, and this guy's ducking that guy, and that guy's ducking. I don't know what they're going through in their regular lives, whether they're even available. I let the people to decide, including them, when they're going to fight, and I applaud when the fights do get made. But I don't get caught up on fights that don't get made. I don't. It
right,
doesn't happen. Doesn't affect me.
right. You know what, Mike, I'm the same way. If it happens, happen. If it don't, it don't. I mean, when you're a fan of boxing, you just love to watch boxing. Do we love the super fights and the good matches up? Yeah, but if it don't happen, I'm fine with it. Just give me some good old boxing. And like Mike was saying, Mike said something, man, that yeah, I'm so tired, Alejandro, of you take like Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, right? These guys have fought so much in the amateurs, against other fighters. They fought international fighters. They're like the top of their league. When I hear people say Errol Spence is ducking Terrence Crawford or Terrence Crawford, I'm like, these guys have fought the best around the world their whole life. Like, you don't get to this level and you duck. You're not scared. It's all about contract negotiations. Please, y'all, stop saying they ducking. They're not.
I know both. I know Bud, and I worked with Errol numerous fights. Man, they're not scared of each other, man.
No.
Very few fighters that people look at these. They look at fighters in a different light. These guys are fighters. They make their living as professional prize fighters. Okay. And whenever I hear anybody degrade a fighter, like, oh, that guy's a bum because he's 3 wins and 8 losses, I give that guy just as much respect. You know why? Because he
Yep.
knows the odds are against him, but there's
Hmm.
man or woman enough to get into that ring knowing that the odds aren't in their favor.
Yep.
People, I always give people their props. I had a chance to do some broadcasting a while back, and I was actually one of the ringside broadcasters when Cepeda fought Prograis on that pay-per-view.
Oh yeah.
Try to give as many fighters as many props as possible because it ain't easy coming in as the out of town guy, 1 win and 3 losses, fighting a 4-0, former national champion. But then you hear people just disparage them or degrade them, and I'm like, that guy, those fighters, men and women, they deserve that respect. And I'm real old school when it comes to that. And I've actually had to check a couple of people and be like, hey man, why don't you get your ass up there? Okay.
Right.
I wasn't a bad fighter. I wasn't a bad amateur fighter, but something in my mind told me that I didn't have what it took to be like these guys. I've been around these guys.
Right.
I've been around De La Hoya.
Hmm.
Been around Bud Crawford. Those cats like that are just wired and built a little different. And as a man and as a person, I'm not ashamed to admit that those guys are exceptional in what they do. Doesn't make anybody else any less because maybe they excel at other things. And I think on the last show, if you would have told me when I was a kid or a teenager in my 20s that I wouldn't leave my mark as a fighter, I'd leave it in a different way. I wouldn't even entertained it. Now life comes back full circle. I'm able to make my mark in a different way. And you know what? As a 56-year-old guy, I'm good with that.
Right. Right. Mike, you just said something that I didn't realize, man. So what was it like? First of all, was this your first time being a broadcaster? If so, or even if it isn't, what is it like, man? Is that pretty hard and difficult to be a broadcaster?
You know what? To be honest, man, I always thought growing up that I was going to get into broadcasting.
Really?
I used to turn the TV down to fight baseball, football, and basketball games as a kid. I had a tape recorder, and I used to narrate the game. I used to do the introductions. It's
Wow.
because of my homicide job. I've been featured on Dateline and CBS 48 Hours Murder Mystery. Uh, done some broadcasting. I've done some play-by-play for a local promotion. I got a chance to do, the broadcast with Ray Flores and Raul Marquez and Boom Boom Mancini, and to be
Hmm.
the sideline reporter. It was a great experience. It's something that I want to do more of. Uh, Something that I'm comfortable with. And it's just it's one more thing that you can do in this world that you love to do. And why not pursue things that you love to do?
Right. Wow. All right. Alejandro, I can ask my basketball questions now.
Go for it.
Mike, were you shocked when Kyrie Irving got traded to the Dallas Mavericks and now he's playing with Luca? And what do you think of those two guys on the same team?
I wasn't shocked because anything with Kyrie, there's going to be a shelf life. I I'm a diehard Clipper fan. I hated to see my second favorite Clipper of all time, Reggie Jackson, go, but it was
Yeah.
they brought back my favorite all time Clipper and Eric Gordon. Okay, so I think the Clippers got a great upgrade with Bones Highland. Mason Plumlee is a big that I've been coveting. Very athletic and he can pass. And obviously having Gordon back really bolstered the Clippers lineup. Kyrie shelf life. Him and Luca are tremendous players. But here's the problem, man. In the playoffs, you got to be able to stick with somebody on defense. Okay.
Right.
Um, I think because I look at Kevin Durant, he's a great talent. He's great. But I don't look at Kevin Durant like a Kobe Bryant, like a Michael Jordan, like a Steph Curry. Guys that stayed with their team pretty much their whole career. Jordan did go to the Wizards, but his he was just goofing around then. He was still score 40.
Right.
You know, Kevin Durant, not a guy that he had a team in Oklahoma City. They were up 3-1 on the Warriors, and they fell apart. So now he goes and joins the Warriors. I just look at it a little different. I'm a huge Clipper fan, but I was a huge Kobe guy. And guys like Kobe, Jordan, and Bird, and Magic, and Barkley, and I mean, those guys are killers. They are killers. So I think the trade deadline is exciting. My son's a huge NBA guy. My son Andrew that works and fights with me. So we were like 2 days texting back and forth. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing that. Now the one big buyout thing. Where's Russell Westbrook going to land? I hope he doesn't land with the Clippers. I think we're good right now. If everybody stays, let him go to the Bulls or let him go to the Heat.
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest, Mike. I know Clippers is your go-to team, right? But I was really shocked that they didn't do better than I thought they were going to do this year. Man, when I looked at that lineup they had, I said, "Oh, Clippers, they're gonna destroy everybody." But they underperformed. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Sometimes I'm not going to say chemistry. This guy's getting along, but I just think that sometimes you can line everything up. It could look perfect, and sometimes it just isn't. Reggie Jackson, I love Reggie Jackson. The Clippers wouldn't have been the last 2 or 3 years without him. He had
Mhm.
his play had fallen off. You're dealing with a lot of injuries with Kyrie. You're dealing with a lot of injuries with Paul George. They never got a chance to gel. If you watch the last couple of games with them, with Eric Gordon and Mason Plumlee in their lineup, I think they're a lot better. As tough as it is for me to see Reggie go, because he's a beloved Clipper, man. He won so many games when Kawhi and PG were out. He played his ass off in the Western Conference Finals. He almost single-handedly beat the Utah Jazz, Dallas Mavericks. So he'll always be a beloved Clipper. But this is pro sports, and you always got to do it's like in homicide. I always say, let's do what's best for the case. In boxing, let's do what's best for the fighters. And in basketball and any other team sport, you got to do what's best for the team.
Yeah, because even with that and with John Wall being there, I was like, man, they really going to do something, but they just didn't come to fruition like I thought.
It really didn't. And sometimes when you line things up and chemistry and not and having different pieces in the right place at the right time means everything.
All right, so Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Aiton. Is the Phoenix Suns going to be unstoppable, or the chemistry just won't be there?
I mean, they're going to be tough, man, but you can't discount the Warriors and their championship pedigree. Denver's a hell of a team. They're very, very deep. The Clippers are going to be right there. They're just as deep. And look, man, the Lakers have rebooted and retooled with Malik Beasley and Vanderbilt um, and D'Angelo Russell. So now you got guys like Lonnie Walker and Reeves who were starting earlier in the year. Now they're like, fringe rotation players, which tells you the upgrade. LeBron is a phenomenal player. If he can stay healthy, Anthony Davis is kind of the same thing. Sometimes he doesn't look that interested. They're going to be tough to. Yes, they're going to be tough. And I think I think a lot of people are looking, at face value, you know, um, the Suns may be that team to beat, but you got to remember, Kevin Durant hasn't stayed that healthy either. He's he's
Right,
he's been nicked up a lot over the last couple of years, similar to PG, similar to Steph Curry, similar to Kawhi, because these guys got a lot of miles on them. 33, 34 years old, man. They've been playing.
right.
They've played a lot of minutes. They play internationally. They play for Team USA. They hoop a lot during the summer. So if you look at it, maybe the Suns should be the odds-on favorite, but that's why they play the game.
All right, and last question I got for you, Mike. Uh, how many years are we away from seeing the Memphis Grizzlies make it to the championship? And is Ja Morant going to be the future of the NBA?
Well, I forgot to mention them. I think he's part of the future of the NBA. But you got to look at a guy that the Clipper had to give up that I just wish we didn't have to give up, and Shea Alexander.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
this dude is cold blooded. They did a stat.
yes.
They said that they scored 30 points over 30 times, and they've played like I don't know, I forget how many games, but he's been the leading scorer in all but like 7 of their games. And I hated that the Clippers had to give him up. So I think you got, and then Jokic in Denver, he has a good thing going. If Murray can come back, from his injury, you got Michael Porter Jr., you got Aaron Gordon playing well. I mean, the future is bright for a lot of these teams. I mean, look at Boston. I mean, they got double trouble over there, man, and beating
Yes.
And look at Giannis and what they've put together in Milwaukee. So, I think Ja's going to be one of those guys in the West that they're going to always be a top, potentially 2 or 3. But, man, it's just I love that. The fact is why you got to play.
You know what, Mike? It's funny that you say that. So many people look at Jaylen Brown and they look at Jason Tatum, right? But I tell people, if you really get down to the heart and matter of it, they can only go as far as how healthy Robert Williams, their center, is.
Yeah, and guys like Marcus Smart that does everything.
Oh, yeah.
He's their dog, man. He's the one checking dudes on defense, and he's diving after the balls. He's letting those guys shine, and every the guy like that, and are a couple of them, and that's why the NBA to me is so exciting. And look, did I enjoy basketball in the 80s and 90s? Of course I did. It's a different brand of basketball, but I think you have a lot more naturally gifted guys, and it's not just 2 or 3 teams that can run away with it. Now you got 7 or 8 teams, and I think that's what makes it so compelling.
Right. And I'm sorry, Mike. I know that I said it was the last one, but this is truly the last one. It took 30-something years for Kareem's record to be broken. Now LeBron James has the record for the most points in the NBA. Now, it took 30-something years. Will this record ever be broken?
I don't think so, man. These guys now, they load manage. They don't play as many games. The careers aren't as long. If so, there's a kid that's 10 years old that's going to break it, 45 years from now. I didn't really think Kareem's record was going to be broken. Hats off to LeBron for breaking it. I never say never, but it's hard to see that this particular.
Right. Got you. That was it for me, man. I got my questions, man. I appreciate it, Mike.
Second half of that game.
What's going on in the second half?
No, I can go watch it. I haven't had a chance to watch it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike, man, for being on, man.
Mike.
It's always a pleasure, man. And
good to see you guys, man. Anytime you guys want to chat, man, just hit me up, and then when you guys get this thing, send me the link. I want to in addition, I want to give a shout out to my good friends over at Boxing. I had a chance to meet them the other night. They're doing good things, selling some boxing products. I actually bought a little end swell from them, and I don't ever try to knock anybody's hustle, anybody trying to do things the right way. Lisa and Carl over there for
okay.
I really appreciate the love and the support, and I look forward to chopping it up with you guys again soon.
All right, and Alejandro, you know what I hope happens, man? I know I got some years to go, but before Mike retires, I really hope, man, I get to be a ringside judge and I get to see Mike in the corner and we just nod at each other while we work an event together.
That would be awesome, man. That'd be, or you start helping us out with war tape and say, hey, look, I got these 4 colleges that want to buy.
There you go.
Buy tape from you. That would be even better.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Mike. I'm gonna get with you this week about that, man, and see what we can do here.
All right, you guys go ahead and do that, man. Have a good night, man. Good talking to you.
All right, take care, buddy.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.